Page 290. Only through this can that which is longed for then become a worry-free reality, without hindrance and bitterness. It must be clear that the consciousness itself is neither good nor evil, but rather fully neutral. Only through the thinking process is it filled with knowledge, cognitions, and abilities, in which case, through the form of thinking, positive or negative, the corresponding sense, character, and the entire imprint emerges. Thus the consciousness is aligned precisely with the kind of thinking, and creates good or evil or equalizedness, happiness or unhappiness, health or illness, approval or disapproval, etc. The consciousness is the actual motor which develops, releases, and brings to use the tremendous power which influences and brings about everything according to the mode of the thinking. The consciousness and its gigantic power embody the will which is created through the thinking, which is radiated out as an invisible might fills the thinker, him or herself, and his or her environment with life-affirming or deadly destructive life. The consciousness and its tremendous power embody the actual material life power which, influenced by the thinking, turns out negative or positive. In other words, this therefore means the power which, through wrong thinking, results in negative doings, deeds, illness, and terrible things, is the same power which, as a result of right thinking, creates right doings and deeds, happiness, success, health, and everything good. So therefore, there is no difference in the power of the consciousness itself, but only in the kind of thinking, through whose activity the negative, positive, or equalizedness arises. From this it results in the fact of vital importance that the thoughts and therefore the thinking form must be trained and controlled, whereby then the consciousness-based power brings forth only good. This, quote, only good, however, is the equalizedness, which is negative and positive in equal parts. Thoughts work like a prism, which is able to bend the consciousness-based rays of power into the positive or negative according to the kind of thoughts in order to have a focused effect as living and enlivening, or as deadly and destructive might. So it only depends on the thinking as to what becomes of the life and the consciousness of a human being. Every success or failure is brought about by the corresponding mode of thinking. Every success breaks down sooner or later and is unstable if it is built upon the invisible foundation of the false thinking. Real and true success, on the other hand, is the result of right, honest, thought-based adjustment, healthy, positive thinking, and conscious affirmation of this thinking form. The whole secret of a successful, good, and healthy life conduct consists of looking into oneself and adjusting oneself to the right thinking form, to bring the thinking into harmony and consonance with the power of the Spirit, in order to thus achieve the best possible, absolutely full development of the present life. The life of each individual human being, him or herself, is relatively absolutely fully developed. That is to say, it is relatively absolutely fully developed according to his or her inner nature and his or her targeted determination. It is, however, also relatively absolutely fully developed according to the present life, when the best possible absolutely full development for this existence is striven for and achieved. But alone, with the achievement of this life determination, it is not enough, because, in addition to this task, it is still incumbent upon the individual human being that he or she brings his or her inner achieved relative absolutely full development also externally to manifestation, through which, consequently, also the environment is influenced and gains benefit. By and large, the human being simply lets him or herself drift like a cork in the wavy waters. Sometimes up and sometimes down, they simply let themselves be pulled along, without defending themselves against the ups and downs, and without wanting to determine their own way. To the highest degree, he or she is the plaything of his or her own moods and dispositions, as well as of all external influences. In one instant joyous and cheerful, in the next moment already ill-humored and unhappy. At one point his or her life lights up in sunshine and roses, then it is again gloomy and hopeless. These negative moods also paralyze his or her initiative and take away the last vestige of the possibly still remaining courage from him or her. Failures come to light and undermine and destroy the self-confidence. Such a human being is ill-humored, depressed, loses friendships, prosperity, and success. As a consequence, everyone avoids him or her in order to not fall into a consciousness-based deplorable state themselves through his or her destructive behavior and through his or her ill temper. Such a human being cannot do and not do what he or she wants. His or her foul mode of thinking will always press him or her into the deepest dirt. It does not matter what he or she undertakes, because everything will always be amiss. Naturally, his or her couragelessness thereby sinks ever deeper, and new terrible things constantly draw near. Also, these are approached wrongly again. Consequently, step by step, the whole psyche falls into confusion, eventually affecting the body and striking it with illness. Thus, endless ups and downs follow without ever achieving a success. If one difficulty is overcome, another one already appears, and indeed, for so long, until the life is brought to termination with Gewaltsamkeit, or until the kind of thinking is changed and remodulated into a healthy, might-oriented thinking. The remedy is simple and always at hand, and complete help is always and in every case possible, if the self-destruction has not already done its final work, and if the falsely thinking person builds up the help in him or herself. Every normal human being who is capable of thinking can learn to command his or her mood, to equalize him or herself, and to always be good-humored, joyous, and satisfied. Every normal human being who is capable of thinking can learn to avoid the often very tragic consequences of foul dispositions and moods, and to attract happiness and success. And those who are able to master their dispositions and moods also master their happiness, their successes, joy, health and radiance, friendships, and all other good things. But here the question is raised now as to how a positive thinking is to be attained and to be achieved. The positive thinking in equalizedness, namely. So, how does one think positively? However, before this question can now be answered and the right way pointed out, some things must first still be explained, things which are of great significance, things which actually should not be said, since they partly belong to the strict, secret science to which the so-called average human being has no access. In former times, these so-called average human beings were tortured to death in the most gruesome wise if they even only caught sight of a book of the secret sciences. But these barbaric regulations have loosened up somewhat in the past hundreds of years, or the year 1800 to 2000. This is because one arrived at the view that various things of the secret sciences could only help the average human being if they were made accessible to them. It was therefore still the case until some time ago that only a few initiates and secret science bigwigs were allowed to get involved in the mysteries of the secret sciences. But today, those who are interested can obtain partial excerpts from these sciences. But also with this, extreme caution is still recommended because there are still the most diverse secret societies that safeguard, or at least believe to safeguard, very great secrets of the secret sciences which they want to preserve in their circles by all possible means of the Gewalt. On the other hand, however, many of these secret society members even today live in the erroneous belief that their knowledge is still as secret as it was hundreds of years ago, and that their teachings, which are also often erroneous, are real secrets of the knowledge and the might, even though they are just as much based on irrational teachings as with the religions. The real knowledge, the deep-reaching and very mighty, however, is completely foreign and unknown to most of the secret societies, through which they often indulge only in the nonsense and irrational teachings. The real secrets of the secret societies are, in effect, only accessible with very great difficulty and are known in only a few initiated circles. And these secrets are so deep-reaching in knowledge that they are truly enormous. Consequently, they are thus kept secret, through which innumerable irrational teachings of the most diverse sciences can be maintained. Thus also the irrational teachings of psychiatry, the religions, and the border and spiritual sciences, etc. From this it results that very many facts are twisted and misunderstood, although they, through a right and healthy thinking process, should actually bring the right and natural solution. An irrational teaching, once established, however, is steadfastly defended and advocated, through which the effective truth suffers and is suppressed. Through the building up of an irrational teaching, and the suppression of the truth as a consequence of it, enormous might arises in every respect, as well as on a financial basis, and with respect to the control of the human beings as objects of exploitation, and so on and so forth. A science based on an irrational teaching is able to beat unexpected masses of entire peoples into its bondage. Thus also, the sciences of the, quote, spiritual healing, which are able to degenerate absolutely healthy human beings into complete idiots. The same science that designates psychically severely stricken human beings as malingerers when they are already so far gone that they see suicide as the only solution. A supposed, quote, spiritual science, which is based on an unexcusable, irrational teaching and which lacks a normal, natural logic. A supposed, quote, spiritual science, which is supposed to be based on a likewise supposed secret knowledge in relation to research of spirit and psyche, respectively, psychic healing. Supposed secret knowledge, which does not have the slightest to do with the real secret knowledge, because the proclaimed supposed secret knowledge only represents an irrational teaching which is very easy to see through. An irrational teaching which is devoid of any real foundation, and therefore cannot lead to any result or success. And that this is really the case is proven by this irrational teaching itself, and indeed by the fact that a really psychically ill human being can never be healed by it, and that such human beings are written off as unhealable, etc., by this supposed secret science. And it should be clearly and precisely stated here that effectively the talk is of psychically ill human beings, and not the talk of, quote, mentally ill, or ones who are ill in their consciousness, or of human beings who are burdened only with major problems, because there is a very big difference between them. And this very big difference remains undeniably present, even if this supposed, quote, spiritual science tries to claim by all means that this is not so. A psychically ill human being suffers only from his or her mode of thinking, which has gotten very badly out of control of the good human nature, whereas a person who is ill in their consciousness is effectively more or less confused in his or her consciousness. But how should this supposed, quote, spiritual science be able to understand and realize the difference if it is not even able to recognize the logic of the most minimal wisdom? Certain sciences, charlatans and deceivers, and many other elements spread throughout the vast labyrinth of the secret sciences, which they, however, are not in the position to unravel. Members of these certain sciences, but also the charlatans and deceivers, would-be greats and fools, indulge in healing practices, etc., which are devoid of any logic and are based on irrational teachings, which become even more widespread through them. For example, there was a psychiatrist who dismissed and abandoned a 27-year-old woman as a hopeless case in the, quote, desert, while the same woman, only 4 months later, with full health, began a new life, healed by the help of a knowing, quote, layman, who, in a short time, had taught her a correct and new mode of thinking. There was, however, also the healer, or i.e. quack, who sold his, quote, infallible gold salts against leukemia and cancer, and who thereby attained a net profit of 600,000 old francs every morning. There was and still is, however, also this and that hypocrite who, quote, as a result of a vow, treats every illness, quote, free of charge, i.e. at a horrendous price, which is paid by the, quote, healed ones as, quote, voluntary honorariums. There was, however, also the fraudulent, quote, biologist, with his pseudo-super serum against leukemia, and there was also the great, quote, great Italian professor who claimed to have captured the fluid of the stars. But there were and are even today the great, quote, miracle and spiritual healers who perform true, quote, miracles and, through near and remote treatment, heal their gullible fellow human beings from all possible and impossible illnesses, even from very many illnesses which are not present at all, or do not even exist in the entire universe. This is all the easier for these charlatans and deceivers to accomplish because the dear human beings have fallen into the deluded belief through religions, and thereby want to be deceived, good and proper, because these poor creatures believe in the nonsense told to them. In all kinds of newspapers, magazines, and trashy publications, etc., advertisements of the following kind are to be found, in which charlatans, with very well-known or even unknown names, refer to the mysterious unknown, to their, quote, spiritual powers, or to, quote, helpers from beyond, to their, quote, enormous knowledge, and to the secret sciences. However, also, quote, scientists and, quote, great ones of the psychiatry of lesser rank spread widely in this manner, thereby bringing their nonsense and their irrational teachings with destructiveness and deadliness to the people. Their advertisements, as follows, are not uncommon. Psychiatry, the miracle science for a healthy, happy life. The psychiatrist, the savior and preserver of your life. The fascinating stare of the hypnotist, effortless, simple, easy. Pains and addictions of all kinds disappear in no time, forever. Give up smoking through hypnosis, guaranteed success. The prana frees you from smoking forever. The wave bracelet, the miracle cure against rheumatism. Awaken love, an effective formula based on ancient Indian magic. Success in love through the miracle talisman. Psychiatrist, rescuer of humankind. The spiritual healer, rescuer of your life. The clairvoyant, your bringer of fortune. Spiritual healer, rescuer in hardship and misery. The real secret knowledge is able to parry many a harsh blow, but in order to expose it to ridiculousness, or the greediness for profit, no charlatan, deceiver, or pseudo-scientist, etc., shy away from adopting the title of a, quote, spiritual healer. Psychiatrist, hypnotist, professor, guru, prophet, or magician, and holy one. And yet the entire, quote, wisdom of these artists often consists only therein that they have completed a few semesters of irrational teaching, or have regaled themselves with unobjective, trashy literature. Trashy literature, which is brought to the people under pompous titles as, for example, quote, spiritual healing, ways to spirit healing, how to become a psychiatrist, you, the great psychiatrist and psychologist, magical arts, your way to happiness, religion, your rescuer, and so on and so forth. It should indeed be self-evident and clear that the aforementioned quacks, quote, scientists, charlatans and deceivers, have in no wise anything to do with those who conduct their science, their, quote, spirit healing, hypnosis, etc., in a real and honest manner, and with the necessary knowledge and ability. Unfortunately, however, it is the case that, of all people, great deceivers, charlatans, and would-be greats with very well-known names have usurped various areas of the healing, deceiving fellow human beings, and writing large, thick books. In no wise is it denied that various human beings are absolutely capable of acting as, quote, spiritual healers, hypnotists, telepaths, and telekinetists, etc., because the consciousness power is undisputably the most immense. It is a power which is even able to destroy matter, and through it this can be accomplished, which are regarded as unexplainable or miracles to the unknowing human beings, but which, when seen naturally and knowingly, are absolutely normal and explainable. But with the demonstration of such consciousness-based powers, greatest caution is recommended, because deception and charlatanry are very much at home in these areas and very often only immensely difficult to verify. This is quite especially the case where a human being is a delusional believer or otherwise very easily influenced. And precisely through these delusional, believing, and very easily influenced human beings, or who unfortunately also still believe in the nonsense of the 6th and 7th, or even in all 13 books of Moses and similar works of nonsense, charlatans and deceivers of all kinds gain the upper hand. Through them, quote, miracle healing and, quote, spiritual, near, and remote treatment come very easily, because if a human being believes in the nonsense of such a deceiver and charlatan, then a healing of a suffering, etc., in the form of a self-healing can be absolutely possible. But then the fact that this healing lies solely in the respective human being's own power, because he or she is convinced of a healing, or any other success, is naturally concealed from him or her by the charlatans and deceivers of all kinds. For how else could they, on the one hand, confess their own incapability, and on the other hand, still rake in huge profits from it? Through the explanation of the truth, however, a success would also be very questionable, and therefore these deceivers and charlatans would be without bread. They are effectively only able to live from the dumbness of their followers and believers, just like the religions. Really earnest human beings who, in all honesty, use secret knowledge, or disclosed secret knowledge, for the benefit of the love for the next one, and help for the fellow human beings, do not indulge in pompous, irrational teachings and in pseudo-knowledge. These human beings think further ahead and attempt to unravel the great secrets of the natural logic and the laws of nature, and to make them usable for the well-being of the human beings.